Hi there, welcome to Roll20. Roll20 is a free online program that'll allow us to host and play virtual Dungeons & Dragons games. And it is the program we will be using for the Dungeons & Dragons Virtual Summer Camp, hosted by Brickworks Academy. In this tutorial, I'd like to show you how to use Roll20 and some of the ways that you can use the basics to simplify your D&D game with us. First, you're going to need a computer with solid internet connection so that you are able to join the Google Meets call we will use, and a free Roll20 account. When you first receive your game invite from your game master, the link will bring you to a page that looks somewhat like this. As you can see, in the center of the screen there is the title of the game. This one's currently called Tutorial Game since it is just the tutorial game. You can also see over here on the right, you can see who created the game, and also who is the game master or dungeon master, which is basically the person who has created the universe that you're all going to play in, and will be playing all the non-playable characters like monsters and just other NPCs. If you look below it, you can see currently there are 0 players, but this will list all the other players that are invited to the game who will be role-playing amongst you. So, when you're ready to play D&D, click the pink Launch Game button right here. Well, we've joined our Dungeons & Dragons game. As you can see, the first thing that is requesting assistance is my Firefox is asking, will you allow the app Roll20.net to use your camera and microphone? Usually we want to say no, but by default it does ask us this question. You're also going to notice here in the bottom left, it will have a list of the players and the game master who are currently in the game. Currently mine is set up to only show the name of the player, which is Rebecca, me, but if you are playing with more people, they will show up as large boxes. If you want to change this to make it less obstructive of your view, you can go over to the right-hand side until you see a My Settings tab. It sort of looks like a gear. It's the one on the far most right. If you click on that, first of all, you can change your display name, since mine is currently Rebecca. You can also change the master volume of your game, as some dungeon masters might like to play some background music to set the mood. But if you scroll all the way down here to chat avatars, you could set it so it does names only. If you're also hearing some sort of echo because people are using their input and output sources, you should be able to scroll down a bit more and then choose. Do you want to broadcast voice and video? You can choose broadcast nothing, disable it. And you can choose the same with receiving. And that way, you should only be able to hear from the Google Meets call and not anything echoey from Roll20 itself. If you scroll back up, you should be able to see this other cool feature called Enable 3D Dice. If you click Enable 3D Dice and enable that, you can also enable Automatically Roll 3D Dice. 3D dice will show up on your screen as if you're playing with real dice in the real world, and they'll look nice and animated to add a little fun and spice to your game. Now let's go over to the chat box, which is in the same set of tabs as the settings list was, except it's this one over here on the left that looks like two chat bubbles. Here, if you click on that, you can see some of Roll20's basic tutorial. They have some of the commands you can use, such as rolling 2 d4s and adding 5. Or you can see there's a GM roll, a secret roll. You can also message other players, but you probably won't need to use this feature since we are playing in a Google Meets. However, you can use this chat box in case you need to be muted in the Google Meet for any reason, or you can't seem to get heard over other people. You can use this chat box. Just type in what you want to say, like hello, and then click enter or send in the button. Currently it shows up as Rebecca, in brackets GM because I'm the game master of this game. However, you can also set it to go as your character, in this case, Talia Blackburn. And this time, if I write hello, it'll send from Talia Blackburn, who would be my character in this game. So the chat box here can be used to roll dice, but it can also be used to send text as yourself, or you can even send text as your character if you want to roleplay a little without the microphone. Now, moving forward to the dice, every time you roll a dice, it will show up in the chat here. So if I go over to the left and just roll a d4, it says I'm rolling the dice, there's the animated dice, and the result shows up in the chat. I will show you an easier way to roll dice later. However, that's just one of the basic ways if you just want to roll a random dice. Now, if you look back to the tabs where the settings and chat boxes were, we can look over to the one that sort of looks like a newspaper. It's called Journal. And here is where you'll find the list of characters and any characters or handouts you are given by the Game Master. Currently, as I mentioned, we are looking at Talia Blackburn. So if I click on this, it'll open a whole bunch of information about Talia, including the Game Master notes, which again are only visible to the Game Master, so you probably won't need to worry about it. Here in the Bio and Info tab would be a picture of your character, as well as a short description if you would like to add one, or if one is already added. However, Talia doesn't quite have one yet. So let's move on to the next, more exciting part, the character sheet. It's this tab right here. Now, that tab opens up a character sheet very similar to the rest of Dungeons & Dragons character sheets. As you can see, it's got her character name, Talia Blackburn, her class as a rogue, level as 1, and race as a high elf. Her alignment is neutral, but that's not quite important for D&D. It really just matters how you want to play them. If you look over on the left, you can see all of Talia's ability scores. See, she has a 10 in strength, which is sort of okay, but she's very high in dexterity. Also, the rest of the skills are various parts of the standard array, which we will be using. However, certain skills like dexterity have been added bonuses because of her race and class. If you look in the middle here, you will see a box called Current Hit Points and Hit Point Maximum. Hit points basically refer to how much health your character has, and they will go up or down depending on healing or damage taken. If you look above this, you can see your armor class. Talia's is 14. You can see initiative bonus, which is 3 here, and the speed, in this case, which is 30. If you scroll on down, you can see a whole bunch of the skills and saving throws that Talia has. And you can also see which ones she's proficient in based on the check marks. So you don't want to mess with the check marks very much. You can also then see the bonus you would have to add to dice. And if you click on any of these, you see how they highlight red. Let's say we wanted to make a perception check, in which case our Dungeon Master would say, "Hey, player, can you make a perception check for me?" So we'd go to the list of skills, scroll over the word perception, and once it turns red, we can click on it. And then you should hear a little noise, and there's the dice rolling for my perception check. And there it is, 23. You may notice that the dice rolled 2 different numbers here that showed up in the chat for perception. Most of the time, we will be using the number on the left. So in this case, Talia rolled a 23, which is pretty good. However, if our Game Master wanted to give us disadvantage on the roll, we would take the lower number. And the reverse works when the Dungeon Master wants to give us advantage on a roll, in which case we'd still take 23. It depends. If you have advantage or disadvantage, you'd take the higher or lower number respectively. Although for the most part, we do just use the left number. Now, as you can see, it rolled these virtual dice, and I believe they disappear once the next person rolls their dice. Now, we can use this to check out damage and attacks too. So if we scroll down from our character sheet again, you can see the types of weapons that Talia has, including the short sword, the short bow, and the dagger. Now, we can see the basic attack modifiers and the types of dice rolled by each attack. However, as they highlight red again, we can click on it. So let's try attacking with our short bow. If I click on that, it'll make the dice rolling noise, make the dice roll, and then if we go down to the chat, we only hit a 9 with our short bow, which isn't very good. However, let's say that this monster is very weak, and we did hit with our 9. In that case, to roll for damage instead of doing some sort of math calculation, we just go down here into the chat where it gave us our roll and see how short bow is highlighted. We click on that, and we've got 5 piercing damage based off the 2 we rolled and the +3 modifier. And that is the damage we would potentially do to whoever we hit with that short bow. This also works with spells very easily. Talia doesn't quite have many spells. However, if you do have a spell that is an attack, it would work right here. You'd just click on it the same you would something else. Now, once we've exited the character sheet, if we look on the left side, there's a whole bunch of different options. Some of these are available to Game Masters only, and some of these you won't need to use that often. However, let me show you what they are. So this first one that's selected looks like the generic mouse on your computer. It's the select and move tool. So as you can see, if I click and drag, it makes a selection of something that's there. In this case, there seems to be a text box for some reason. If I click delete, it'll get rid of that. And it'll also let me scroll in and out with my scroll wheel, or if I want to move something around, such as my character, I can move her around. Pan view, the hand, will let me, Pan view will let me scroll just by clicking and dragging without actually moving around my mouse scroll wheel. If you go to the next one, which for you guys will be this, you are able to draw. As you can see, let's zoom in here. As you can see, when I click and hold, it draws something. So this can be particularly useful if you want to point something out to your teammates. Say, hey, look, there's this fountain right here. You can draw an arrow. However, there's an easier way to point things out to your teammates. You can also just click and hold with the select move button, left click and hold, and then it gives out a nice little ping. However, say you did need to draw something for some reason. Maybe you wanted to draw the trajectory of your magic spell. In which case, you'd have all these drawings on the table, but how do you get rid of them? What you need to do here is click Clear Drawings and get rid of all of them. So if you do accidentally make something with your drawing and you want to clear it, you just go to this tab and at the bottom it says Clear Drawings. There's a whole bunch of other ways to draw on your screen, such as drawing a shape or making a polygon or line, or even if you want to type something out instead, but you can clear all of it with the Clear Drawings tool. Next we have the magnifying glass, which works like this scroll in the corner, as it lets you zoom in and out of the map. See, if I go to 190%, it gets very zoomed in. If I go to 10%, it goes very zoomed out. So you want to adjust it depending on your screen size and how much of the room you're able to see at that moment. For me, 90% is pretty good. This next tool is the ruler tool, and what it does is it allows you to measure things on the grid. As you can see, Talia's character token is right here, which I will explain in a minute. But I can use the ruler to determine how far away she is from anything. Let's say there's a monster on the other side of the fountain over here. Well, maybe the monster only has poison breath, but it can only go about 5 feet. I don't really know how much 5 feet is in Dungeons & Dragons, but if I use this ruler tool, I could see she's clearly more than 5 feet away. In general, 5 feet is worth one of the squares on the grid. And since Talia's move speed was 30 over here, that means she could move 6 squares at a time. See? 30 feet is 6 squares. That's how fast she is. She's very speedy. So you can use the ruler tool to show different lengths and measure things. You can have it so it hides from the other players, or you can have it show to the other players in case you want to try and make some plans together. Now I believe the next one for you is the dice roller. You might have seen me roll a d4 earlier using this just to demonstrate the 3D dice. However, this tool, instead of using the character sheet to roll, will allow you to roll very specific dice. If you want to roll a d4, you just click d4, but you can also roll 2d4s, 3d4s, 4d4s, 5d4s, and it keeps going with all the different dice in D&D. If you go to the advanced dice roller, it'll open up another panel which will let you further figure out how your dice needs to work. Though you probably won't need to use it very often, it is handy to know. Back to tokens, which I mentioned briefly. On the map, there will be several tokens, usually referring to a character, an item, or a monster which you need to fight, or just a non-playable character. As you can see, Talia's token right here is this blonde elf girl with a bow. And since I'm playing as Talia, I can move her around by left-clicking and dragging her. As you can see, when I click on her, a bunch of little bubbles pop up. These bubbles can be used to indicate specific health bars. However, that's probably what your game master will be doing, not you. But it is nice to know what those buttons are. This button down here, it kind of looks like a bubble. If you click on that, you will be able to see all sorts of status effects. So let's say that Talia got stunned or poisoned. Let's do poisoned. Then, if our game master wants to add the skull icon, we can see clearly that Talia is poisoned. Another fun one is if your character has died. Well, I guess that's not so fun. You can put the big ol' red X all over them, just to signify that your character is dead. If you want to go to the settings, you can also see some further customization, such as the name of your character and who can control them. However, that's not too important for a character. You mostly just want to be able to move over so that Talia can move her 6 squares of movement speed. Well, I believe those were some of the basics of Roll20. After watching this video, you should have all you need to know about playing D&D virtually. So we look forward to seeing you at the Dungeons & Dragons Summer Camp, and we hope you enjoy. Farewell! Go kill some monsters!